There's the Pledge of Allegiance is on here, but we don't typically do that. Maybe we should in honor of all the principals in the room, but let's not do that. And I hope I don't get accused of being anti-patriotic as a result of that. Do we have any public comment? There is no public comment. Instructional council updates. You want to?
We do have a brief update. So good afternoon, Pastor Mooney, Ms. Slade, Dr. Baker, and Mr. Ross. It is now October, and Instructional Council will officially begin this month with the two different sides meeting, the GREA and the district representatives. Last month, you received a list of members from the district, and what I want you to know is that we pulled that list back, so that list that you have is inaccurate because we wanted to review Article 7 and make sure that we were following the agreed contract between the district and the GREA. So we have now redefined who our members will be. And just yesterday I received a list from Ms. Wilson identifying who the members would be representing the GREA.
Okay.
So, and there was a meeting of administrators that will be on Instructional Council that happened earlier this month. So you will have next month an update. The council actually meets next week, Thursday, on the first official meeting for the council. Okay?
Okay.
All right.
Thanks
Thank
a
you
lot.
so much.
Okay, so actually I'm going to ask Ms. Evans to come forward. And I don't know if Teresa, if you were planning to join us, or no, you just, okay. Right, you're just going to make sure everybody's doing their job? Is that what you're hearing? That helps, that puts everybody at ease. So there is, and so hopefully, I don't know if the rest of the committee members had a chance to see the agenda before we started meeting, but there is a change from our expectations. We were planning on spending more time on mostly just a full discussion on efforts at improving attendance in the district. And as you see, the last item on the agenda is related to attendance. We are going to postpone that discussion, and then we'll have a full report of that at our board retreat. So today, we are going to do, and I'll let Ms. Evans explain the specifics of why we're doing this, but today we're going to focus on the priority schools. So I'll let you go ahead and explain why we're doing that, why it's important.
Well, recently there was a mandate that requires our priority schools to present to the Board of Education 3 to 4 times per year. So as a result of that, we moved to get our schools, our priority schools, involved right away because, of course, our calendar is very short and it goes by very quickly. So we would like to begin this afternoon with having Mel Atkins spend about 3 to 5 minutes just giving you the highlights of the priority school process. And then subsequent to that, we'll have the 5 schools come and they will provide an overview of their data, and it will be very brief. We have indicated in the outline that I shared with you 20 minutes, but we don't foresee that their presentations will take 20 minutes at all, unless your questioning should go on for a while. But the schools will focus on the 4 questions that are there, and we hope within 5 to 10 minutes, they can give you a good sense of their current status and the strategies that they have in place in order to address their deficit areas.
Okay, so it seems like the most important part is for us to understand this first part with process that Mel is going to talk about, so that way we can kind of see how each of the schools fit in. And there's another 5 schools that we'll have at a later meeting. Okay, so there's a lot of schools to get through, so we'll do that.
It's not going to be 20 minutes each.
No, that's, yeah, so
That would be a
that's
lot.
daunting, and so
I'm looking at the principal saying,
we had
that's a lot.
We had let them know somebody else is have to put dinner on.
Relax. It's
Dinner will
not
be on,
20
okay,
minutes.
so we had a very brief caucus to correct that before. This is going- so-
Like
So
right
really,
now.
I think that if we understand the process, then the individual schools, we can just kind of see how each fit into this process, so.
And we'll look for feedback from you on adjusting the process for next time.
Okay. All right. Now, is there a presentation for this?
There's just a few talking points that should have been in your packet. It won't be too long.
Actually, this is a quick, and I should have mentioned this before, but is there information for the screen?
I can put it on there. Need it.
I think that, yeah, why don't we, because I have heard through the grapevine that there is a request that a lot of times people watching this meeting at home can't really tell what we're talking about.
Right.
And so, which makes sense, since we're talking about documents that nobody can see. So why don't we go ahead and put that up, and I think it'll help us. And then I'm going to move, so that way I'm not in the middle of,
Is that moving over by you?
that's twice in one day, right there?
But it better be than you.
I'm gonna click it on here.
See the socks, I'm just into
Just looking for it. I do apologize. I have it on my computer.
It's on the, can you get to just the board website?
Oh, yeah, I can do that.
Are you kidding? 20 minutes each. Listen to the President of the United States for 20. Listen to you. Different if you're in a church. Church, we don't let them go. That's right. And if they go, it's the sermon is going.
Is he coming?
It's thinking. It's thinking about thinking. There it is.
My mind wanders at 20 minutes is all we can have. 15 minutes. So we're not going to discuss
Okay.
attendance today. I guess not.
Gotta log in.
Discuss it. So we continue like that.
All right, great.
All right.
Thanks a lot. Sorry, I should have
No
mentioned that
problem.
before the meeting started.
No problem. Usually I have my laptop with me. What I want to do is provide some context for you before the schools present. They're going to be coming a few different times about what priority schools are. Priority schools do represent our lowest 5% schools. On Michigan's top to bottom list, there are 3 designations that you're going to become familiar with. One is reward schools, then focus schools, and then priority schools. Today, we're just focusing on priority schools. So priority schools, you see here, how you get there is three different criteria. Student achievement is 50%, and when you do your scores, it's a 2-year average. So the schools that are here today are year 2 schools, meaning they were named last year. So it was last year when they took the MEP test. They're taking the MEP test now, and then the year before when they took the MEP test. And then you have achievement growth, which is 25% of your scores. Everyone has math and reading, and then science, writing, and social studies. If you have those tested grades, it's a 2-year average performance. It's improvement, decline, and you compare it against the other schools. And then there's a gap, achievement gap, the gap between your average student scale score and the top 30%, top 30 and bottom 30%, right there. So if you take those 3 factors, achievement, growth, and gap, those determine kind of who gets on the list and who doesn't get on the list.
A quick question on growth. Is it growth of the same child, or is it growth from one year to the next?
No, good question. 1 year to the next.
So it's the third year scores this year, third grade scores this year
Yep.
versus next year's third grade scores.
Right.
So it's not growth.
Yep.
It's not how we teach the child.
No. So what you have to remember, though, there's always going to, and the funny part with this is we can grow, but there's always going to be a top and there's always going to be a bottom. So your growth is comparing to other schools. So you may say, oh, wait a minute, we look at our scores and we grew 5 points or 6 points, but it depends on how the state grew too. That makes a big determination of it. But the biggest one is achievement. The biggest out of the one is strictly student achievement out of the categories. This is kind of where I was just trying to explain the testing cycle. The testing cycle was fall of 12 and the fall of 11. So this just shows you add these 2 scores up to get that. So every year you're going to have 2 years of scores to get who determines who's a priority school or not. Also, besides, I said it's the lowest 5%. Any school with a graduation rate of less than 60% for 3 consecutive years is automatically a priority school. And then identification is for 4 years, meaning 1 year planning, 3 years of implementation. So once you get on the list, kind of regardless of if you went up or down or if you're improving, you're on it for 4 consecutive years. So what does this really mean? What you really have to do is you have to pick one of 4 models, intervention models. And the models are, you have turnaround, you have closure, close, you have restart, you have turnaround and transformation. Those things. You have to pick one of the 4 models. It's going to be monitored and tracked for implementation, progress, and improvement. Some of the requirements here, but not all of them, one of the models is like for transformation. This is one of the models that most of our schools are using. It's 11 requirements, including replacing their principal. But a key note in this that's very different is this: we had the U.S. Department of Education had a flexibility waiver that went this past March, and really what it says is you don't have to replace their principal if they display the turnaround competencies. And there's 5 competencies that they're saying. A leader can show rapid improvement and growth. So if you have that leader, you can make an appeal to MDE saying, no, we don't want to do that. That wasn't there in the past.
Who picks the models?
Who picks the models? So, good question. We picked the model in collaboration with cabinet, superintendent picks the models.
And students have no say-so.
And then, so that's just if you're thinking back to, because it's very similar to SIG. if you think back to, you had to replace it, but this time it's really up to the district to determine, can this principal really make it, turn around the efforts or not? Evaluation and reward is another one. You know, how are you going to reward people that turn around achievement? And the evaluation, evaluating your staff on performance, you know, not just on seniority. And the laws have changed since then. That Michigan's law has changed since then to reflect that too. Part of this is increased learning time. Another difference with increased learning time. Before, you had to change the physical minutes of the day, but now what you have to do, and well, we had a lot of money to do it last time. Last time we had over $24 million to increase the day, do those things. We don't have those dollars this time. So what the state is saying now through all the schools in Michigan, that's one option, but another option now is still using your existing time, but better, for like bell-to-bell teaching, reducing transitions, making sure, we're going to talk about attendance at a different time, but making sure kids come to school, come on time. Those structures are just as important, they're saying, as adding minutes to something you're already doing. Do something with your time that you have now. That's what we're doing now. You see the family engagement, involving families, and operational flexibility, giving buildings a chance to try something. You know, it's okay to try a research-based strategy that maybe everyone else is not trying. You know, that's fine with that. And that's kind of some highlights with the transformation plans. The other ones that some people pick here at the turnaround model. The turnaround model has those same areas. But the main difference between that and the transformation is replacing 50% of the staff. For example, Ottawa Hills will be coming later at another meeting. Ottawa Hills will be implementing the turnaround model. And so there's a process of how that's vetted, how that's gone through. In the past, we had 6 schools. We had our middle schools. We had Westwood, Alger, Ford picked the turnaround model in the past. And then you have closure, restart. That's those models too. This is just a attempt for a chart to keep everything organized. So this is going to take some explanation. So what this shows is we have 6 schools. Remember, SIG, SIG ended last year, but we have a year of sustainability. So SIG, we had to sustain our efforts for this year. So you see Alger, Westwood, Ottawa, and Union there. So SIG trumps everything if you do the pecking order. But then you have priority schools year 2. So Aberdeen, Brookside Campus, and Kid Hills, they submitted the plan last year. So that was their 1 year planning, 3 years implementation. That's why it says 2012 to 2016. And then you see Union and Westwood on the side. Union and Westwood was named, but remember, SIG trumps everything. So Union and Westwood are still doing their SIG plan, and then next year, so what they're going to do is submit a plan, really today, a draft plan, and then they're going to implement next year. Then their date is still 2012 to 2016. Then we have priority school year 1s. These schools in their first year, Dickinson, MLK, Ottawa, are schools that have to submit a plan this year. And then you see the final plan is due November 24th. There's a draft plan due today, October 8th. The final plan due November 24th. 1 year of planning, 3 years of implementation. So that's why you see 2013 to 2017. Then there's 2 schools that closed, Camp Paul and Shawnee. And then you see Kent Hills, Aberdeen, and Campus. They were named 2 consecutive years. So they were named last year. So they've written a plan, but now they just have to implement the plan. But it's a lot of different dates that go right here. So the only way we can keep it straight in our head was we try to make a chart of a pecking order of what makes sense with that. And then what I didn't talk about on there is the focus schools, and we probably do that at a different meeting. That's the kind of the broad structure for the buildings to get into their plans. Questions?
Yeah, I do have a couple questions. One on, with these plans obviously being 4-year plans, right? 3 year, 4 year?
Well, see, it's 1 year planning, which is now.
3 years
and then
implementation, excuse me.
3 years implementation.
Yeah. About the building leadership, doing this implementation process, I guess I just want to see if we're really committed to ensuring that building leadership stays the same through those implementation phases.
I'll take that. That answer is no, not necessarily. Because what we're not going to do is wait 4 years for this to turn around. I do appreciate the fact that the state is allowing us to make the decision, because we know based on research, 2 years, it takes more than 2 years to turn a school around. And so for us to get a waiver from the federal government through Michigan Department of Education, that at least allows us to look at some of those strengths that we believe leaders should possess, especially in turning buildings around. But there are cases when we believe we have people that are not capable of doing that. And so we do provide professional development for people. We provide assistance for them. But there are certain qualities that we look for. If you recall, when we took these leadership roles a couple years ago, we wanted to stop the churn in the district. We believe that the positions that the people that we have placed in these positions are the right people. However, if we see at a given time that we may not have the right person because of whatever reason, then I, as superintendent, would reserve the right to remove that person. Absolutely. But for the most part, our goal is to hold the district steady. And so I can give examples where we have replaced principals every year for years. That's not the goal. And we talked about that 2 years ago. Remember, it really is to hold this district steady. But there will be cases, rare, but there will be cases that people will be removed.
Okay, that's really what my concern was as far as, replacing folks yearly. And I guess a follow-up to that, not at all trying to push anyone to lose a job, but I guess the first piece of that, and when you're talking about evaluating principals, will those 5 competencies come into play then as far as, maybe evaluating isn't the right word, but determine if they're the right fit to see that implementation through?
That's part of it.
So I guess my question is, if we determine that someone isn't the right person to see that implementation through, I'm not saying fire them, but I guess my concern is shifting that problem to another school that person may represent. And that may not be a question for this time, but I guess
But it is. I understand what you're saying, Mr. Ross. It is. What we try to do in Grand Rapids, especially during the past 2 years, is not to build situational leaders. We believe if you are a good leader, you can lead whether you're at Shawmut or Camp Hall. But there are cases when it's just not a good fit, and you know that. And so I do reserve the right to remove that person. Absolutely.
Thank you.
Any other questions about the process of what a priority school is? And
Only comment I have is it's so difficult to, I'm glad you're keeping track that way, because just trying to figure out who.
It's a puzzle. It is a puzzle, Mrs. Slade. Absolutely.
It's really complicated.
Very. No, it's very complicated. The one thing that we do like, though, is some of the rules are being relaxed and saying school districts know what's best. And so that has been a change. That always wasn't the same. So they're saying you're in it. So if you want to extend the day this way with bell-to-bell teaching, with our academic plan, and you put your marbles in that, then so be it. You'll be held accountable. If this is the leader for you or not for you, you make that decision, but you're held accountable. And that always hasn't been the case.
The other thing, if I can just add, in Grand Rapids, we have great leaders. Not only great leaders in our schools, we've also placed additional staff members to support. And so I think that that's really important to know, that if we place a person at Dickinson, we want that person to be very successful, And so we are committed to placing other staff members, whether it's an attendance officer, and at Coit, we placed another administrator so that we can honor the theme. So we're doing everything that we can. We have our professional development plan, which is very strong. And these principals, these building leaders, they work together as a team, which is unlike you will find across the state of Michigan. And so because of how we've set up our new transformation plan with reinventing schools and reinvesting, these people come together to support each other. So it's a team. So that's a different concept than what you will find across the state with priority schools.
Can we go back to the fact you mentioned earlier about the models? You said there were 4 models. And I asked earlier about who select those models. Do the principals or your administration, do they select the models that fit the particular school?
That's a yes and no. The first time around, we did allow the building leaders and teams to select. That doesn't always happen. Not very many people are going to vote to close their own school. So it's just not going to happen. In some cases, we do believe that people should have more flexibility. In others, I make the decision along with the board. An example of that is Union High School. Union High School was a SIG school, and they did the transformation model. It didn't get us very far. So we decided, the board, myself, and my cabinet, we decided that we would submit a plan for a turnaround. We are doing the exact same thing at Ottawa Hills High School. So would I go to the staff members at Ottawa and say, is it okay if I remove 50% of you, or if I close Ottawa? That answer would be no. And so I don't think that that's the right position to even put people in. And then for students to vote, I don't know that they have the knowledge to do that. Students are very attached to their schools. They are extremely attached to their teachers. And so they would not have the information to say, close my school. I think that is a role of a board, that is a role of a superintendent, is to make the decision when something is not going the right way. And so for Ottawa Hills next year, I have decided the plan that they will submit to the state is a turnaround.
Okay, let's move on into the individual school reports, because we have 5 to learn about. So we're going to go.
Sure with that.
So we're going to go, that's fine. We're going to go alphabetically?
Yes.
Are you Aberdeen? Okay, so.
Good afternoon. I'm Lori Graff, and I'm principal of Aberdeen. This is my second year as principal and principal of Aberdeen. So, when we were asked to present our plan, we were asked to choose a couple of different slides for you. And I included our vision and mission statement for Aberdeen because one of the charges we were given in our initial PD as a staff was to compare our school vision along with the district vision. And we kind of came to a screeching halt because there wasn't really a vision for Aberdeen. We had some belief statements. So collaboratively as a staff, this is really our focus, and we're focusing on creating an environment for our students so that they have the skills to be successful for their next placement. And we're really focusing on the whole child, and you'll see that within our strategies as well. We were asked to give our teaching and learning priorities and why we chose these. The questions were a little bit different on the agenda, so I'm just going to kind of explain this. When we looked at our data last fall, we spent the year, really looking at data and creating our plan. What we noticed is that our school grows at the same rate as the district, but there's always a gap, and we never close the gap. So we really looked at strategies that would give us some leverage to really close that gap for our students.
So by gap, you mean a gap between you and the rest of the district?
And more. So we were looking for those high leverage strategies that we can help our students so that they're, ultimately career and college ready. So The strategies that we're working on right now are differentiation. This comes from one of our data dialogues last year when it was clear that we were not all having the same understanding of what differentiation is. And so through the help of Kindy Segovia, through the Ken ISD, the staff has been working on this. In our research, we found that giving students high-quality feedback in time to actually use that feedback was huge in terms of helping close the gap. So that is one of our focuses as well. We are focusing on questioning, both text-based, getting students involved in their thinking, where do you see that, how do you know, guiding discussions, and really getting students to talk about and understand what they're learning and reading. Other things that we're focused on is really some positive behavior supports. We're really trying to get our PBIS going well this year. We work on monthly celebrations, weekly bear tickets, and we have just instituted this year, we're trying some Monday morning meetings where we kind of start the day off right and, talk with the kids and recognize them for the work that they've been doing. We're also focused.
Chicago Bear tickets?
Say that. Oh, sorry. We were the Aberdeen Polar Bears, and so bears were our tickets. I guess you'd need to know that. Apologize.
Thanks.
We also have worked really hard on a math action plan by grade level this year, and when you look at our data, I'll kind of explain why that is. So, you ready? I don't think it's any secret that we're not doing as well as we would like in the MEEP. And what we notice, it's kind of hard to see that, but we struggle in both math and reading, but the math we struggle even more. And so we really took a look at the MEEP and where we were missing some of the targets with our students. And teachers all the way down to kindergarten, we looked at this collaboratively to really figure out what are those foundational skills we need to help our students with. If you compare our MEEP data to our MAP data, which is the next slide, and that may need to be, I don't know if you can make that bigger. I'll just kind of summarize this for you. Pretty much the MAP mirrors the MEEP in what we found when we were looking at our data. Our students struggle with number sense and number fluency, number and operations, measurement, and data. In reading, again, mirrored what we saw within our MEEP, and that is some of our foundational skills for our younger students, letter recognition, and then informational text and literature for our older students. We're K-8, so we're kind of spanning from kindergarten to 8th grade. We were also asked what is being done about the deficits, and I think I have addressed some of that, the math action plan, our strategies that I shared with you, and really differentiating, really working on what that means and helping our students, meeting them for where they are. And I think that's. Did you have any questions?
So you hope to see some significant improvements in math and reading?
We are going to see some improvements in math and reading.
Okay.
Thank you. Yep. It's non-negotiable.
I'm in agreement with you.
So it sounds like your main strategies is like really getting into a new shared understanding of differentiation, feedback, et cetera, and making sure everybody's on board with that.
Mhm. And also really looking at giving students feedback and an opportunity to work with that and make their, being a self-directed learner, making those corrections and learning from that.
Do they have the proper equipment, such as the math books and reading books and stuff?
We do currently. Yep. If you'd like to donate some iPads or something, we would take them, but.
Depends on whether or not Mo figures out how to use that.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Thanks a
Thank
lot.
you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Denisha Killingham, and I am the new principal at Brookside, and this is Adam Rusticus. He is our new math coach at Brookside. Adam and I try to meet regularly, and when we meet, we talk about not only our current data, but also the school improvement plan. And some of the things that we talked about are determining priorities, and that would be MEEP because it's such a high-stakes test. MEEP, we kind of looked at it as the umbrella, and MAP and DIBELS both support that. And we found that Brookside has made some really wonderful improvements. They are 41% proficient in reading for third graders, 58% proficient for fourth graders, and 49% for fifth graders. And that's up 15% for our third graders, 13% for our fourth graders, and 6% for our fifth graders. And we just hope to sustain that growth. And one of the ways that we talked about doing that is really focusing on the teaching and the learning priorities, which are to develop math extensions, giving teachers time to actually synthesize the new curriculum, giving teachers time to discuss across grade levels some of the deficits that we found, which is numbers and operations. And you'll probably hear that a couple of times throughout these presentations. We also want to focus on increasing the rigor for our students in math, not just pouring the information into them, but teaching them concepts to apply not only in their grade, but across K through 5. We also want to create lesson plans, not so much a lesson plan, but more of a design, so teachers are very aware of where their students are, what category do they fall in, so that we can increase our skill for differentiation. The two big ideas that we found in our school improvement plan was math and, again, reading. And in our reading, two of our strategies were quality text independent questions, and under that umbrella falls engagement and very organic discussion, and that also lends itself to behavior in our PBIS. We also talked about close reading, and that is a skill that allows students to read a text more than once. We found that reading the text once, they skim through it, they answer the questions quickly, and not really getting a full understanding of what the literature is asking. We're going to monitor our progress through data dialogues, through learning walks, professional learning communities, and again, that is where we'll embed some of that professional development for teachers. We'll do observations, we'll have peer-to-peer feedback. Our coaches, we have a math coach and a reading coach this year. They will be working with teachers. Teachers will be able to do a fishbowl, and that's where they're able to visit classrooms not only with themselves, but with their entire class. And of course, evaluations for monitoring. Our new data really supports what our school improvement plan encompasses. It just kind of falls, again, underneath that umbrella. Numbers and algebraic thinking are a huge piece that we want to focus on this year. And for reading, foundational skills and vocabulary, we found that some of our English language students really struggle in that area of foundation skills and vocabulary. We have a lot of PD listed in our plan. Teachers are going to get PD on close and critical reading, again, that job embedded PLC time, quality text dependent questions. I won't go through all of these things, but again, being able to form those groups and giving students as much individual direct instruction as possible. Our next steps are to we have Michigan Reading Corps, we have Schools of Hope, and being able to segment our classrooms into very specific skill-based groups. That's it. Any questions?
So the key things that are different now than prior to the priority list designation is the professional development and the close reading.
I think the biggest piece that that they picked last year when they developed the plan was professional development for the teachers. I think that they found that that worked really well last year, and we just want to continue with that.
Can you educate me quickly? What's the difference learning walk versus a classroom visit? Learning walk, I'm just not familiar with.
Oh, learning walks, that's where a group of teachers and myself, we go through classrooms and look for very specific things. So it could be, have you ever heard of a word wall? Word wall? Word wall. So it's where we could look and see what kind of words are they studying. Do you have objectives posted on the board? Just going through and seeing what other teachers are doing and giving them feedback to the classroom teacher.
Okay, thank you. I guess I was just wondering the difference between that and the classroom visit then.
A classroom visit is less specific. So a classroom visit, you could observe pretty much anything, but a learning walk would be more a narrowed focus.
Thank you.
Yes. Mm-hmm. The learning walks, yes. Mm-hmm. Yep, and myself, and anyone from outside the district as well can be brought in. It'll be 6 times this year.
And one other quick question, coordination with Loop, so that sounds good. So
Yes.
this is a
and
next
our
step?
Loop teacher. Yeah,
Okay,
that's
good.
one of our next
You
steps.
came here for some reason, you might as well.
Well, I'm here for moral support.
He said he's gonna be brave for me today.
So what's up with the coordination with Loop? What's the plan for that?
Since I'm in the building already, it's a lot easier for me to coordinate with the teachers and the administration.
Okay.
And kind of bring all of that information from the school improvement plan and the priority plan back to Loop, so they have that additional instruction after school as well.
Okay, good. That's good to hear.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Bernard Colton, the principal of Campus Elementary. This is Mrs. Ross, our assistant principal. This is Jill McCauley, our reading coach.
I met you when you first came here. How's it been going?
Oh, it's great. Yes, yes. I was here first, though. So I learned here and then I took it there. We're going to start with the first slide. The first slide represents MEP data from 2011 and 2012. The data indicates proficiency levels both in reading and math. Further analysis indicate the areas of weakness where reading comprehension, math, and numbers and operations in math. Can you go back?
Sorry, got a little ahead of myself.
I'm sorry. And if you look, we want more blue. What's that color? Kind of purple?
Yeah.
Less red, more purple. Am I right?
Yes, yeah.
Okay, I'm ready. The data determined priorities for teaching and learning. The item analysis for MEEP data 2011-2012 indicated the areas of concern: reading comprehension, math, numbers, and operations. The key strategies were researched to address priorities for teaching and learning were included in the transformation redesign plan and the school improvement plan. This is the most recent data from MAP fall 2013. And we can't. From the most recent MEEP and MAP data, these remain our areas of focus: reading comprehension, foundational skills, vocabulary, literary, informational text; for math, numbers and operations, algebraic thinking. Strategies to address priorities. Thinking maps, they were highly researched, focused on 8 fundamental thinking skills that help students build conceptual understanding across all content areas. Quality questioning enhances higher order thinking skills, arms students with skills necessary to dig deeper into the content beyond basic recall, retell. Quality questioning research is based on practice to engage every learner. Strategies selected for math were based on the Institute for Education Science. Interventions guided that vet strategies for struggling students. Both these strategies were determined to be high-yield strategies. Systematic, explicit instruction means delivering instructions in a systematic, delivering in appropriate sequence order to build foundation. And explicit, specifically including detailed instructions to build conceptual understanding, including modeling, guided instruction, collaborative learning, corrective feedback, and cumulative reviews. Deb Larson will provide ongoing Thinking Maps training that includes modeling and coaching for every teacher and students. Priorities for teachers for teaching and learning are addressed in every professional learning community and staff meeting. Flexible grouping allows students to be grouped accordingly to needs of various content within the classroom, across multiple classrooms. During coaching cycles, coaches model, co-teach, collaborate with teachers to ensure strategies are implemented with fidelity. Walkthroughs are the same as learning walks. Will occur on a weekly basis. The focus of walkthroughs are determined from weekly coaches meetings with administrators to determine the focus areas. Coaching cycles with teachers focus on these areas: map data, formative and summative assessments, reading street, running records, dibbles, everyday math, unit tests will be analyzed at every third Monday PLC to determine priorities and next steps. And is that it? That's our last slide.
So the strategies that are new, so from prior to.
Well, the first thing, we have different staffing. We have a reading coach and math coach.
Okay.
Those were the first big new things that we did. And then our thinking maps and the thinking maps training.
Basically, the strategies that you see listed for reading and math, you'll see these strategies both in the transformation redesign plan in addition to the school improvement plan. So these are the ones that overlap. So we just thought these were the key strategies that would yield the greatest improvement. So that's why you see those highlighted here. And as far as new, the thinking maps and the quality question is definitely driven by a district initiative.
Okay.
Our focus is really wanting our children to own their learning. able to use thinking maps, but also be able to speak to why they're using the map that they're using for the purpose of what skill they need to think the problem through.
Okay.
Can I ask what level are they reading at right now?
The majority of our students are reading well below grade level. Our Dibbles report just came in, and for example, our fifth graders, 79% were below benchmark, based on the last data.
And our first graders were like 71%. Kindergarten was maybe 81%.
I think it's important, though, to mention how far you guys have come. Because you came from 0%
Right.
to the first percentile in the state. And this was a very short period of time for this team here. So I think that's important to recognize that it does take time. I apologize for not speaking the mic, but it does take time to do it. But even though your students are below grade level, I think that it's worth knowing what you guys have accomplished as a team.
And there were several things we had to change in the building. One was consistent leadership in the building, a consistent discipline policy, just giving the teachers some relief with discipline, making sure that we follow through on the academic plan also.
I think that's an important point. It wasn't consistent, so now with this team in place, we'll probably see some good progress. Good. Hang in.
We will.
Thank you.
Thanks, it's really helpful to hear actually what it ends up meaning, so it's good.
Thank you.
You know how I feel. I believe in
Okay, good.
Thank you.
PowerPoint slides.
Thank you.
In the handouts is just some evidence of things that we've been doing at Kent Hills to ensure that our redesign plan is moving forward. And you can see from our MEP data that over 60% of our students were not proficient in math, specifically in math fluency, and only 40% of the students were proficient in reading comprehension. And this data comes from 2 years' worth of looking at data. So what we did last year, Kathy Muser and the staff determined some priorities. They wrote a redesign plan, and so now I'm at Kent Hills implementing the plan. We created the main things in the redesign plan would be differentiated instruction, learning targets, student engagement, and then looking at the superintendent's dropout challenge. When you look at differentiated instruction, the main focus of the redesign plan was to look at the gradual release model, which is I do, we do, you do. And the idea behind the gradual release model is to really make sure that we're not spoon-feeding the children, but actually making them do some of the work. So we've gone through some professional development on that through the KISD. Small group instruction is a huge piece. If you look at the new curriculum plans laid out for the district, math and reading both require several groups of small group instruction. So in the handout, you'll see that I met with my coaches. We looked at what is required of teachers, and we made some templates for them so they can indicate their small group, how they differentiate, as well as what are the learning targets for each of those areas. It was a lot of work, and then we presented it to our teachers, and they actually thanked us for that work, because just trying to wrap your head around all of the small group instruction that teachers have to do, it's an amazing amount of work. Learning targets is where teachers are asked to post for every lesson that they teach, what they want the students to actually learn. I can statements, and that is new for the teachers this year. Student engagement, text-dependent questioning, and goal setting. I've asked my staff to create a profile with every student so that they have maybe a folder with their data in it, and they're setting goals on how they're going to improve on the MAP test. And then we have celebrations at the end of the year and in the middle of the year when they watch their scores grow. So the kids get really excited about that. And then the superintendent's dropout challenge, we have identified a number of students, and we're closely watching the growth of those students. And most of them were identified because of attendance issues as well as academics. And so we've worked very hard. One of our main priorities is ensuring that our climate is a healthy climate, one that's engaging for students, and specifically targeting these students so that we know that we're doing everything we possibly can to keep them in school. And they're like second graders, third graders, and fourth graders primarily on that list. Monitoring, you have an example of our peer-to-peer, it says bridge to practice on the top. So all of my teachers are lined up to observe another teacher, and then they, switch back and forth. We have our data dialogues and learning walks as well. The learning walks, I've had my coaches on some learning walks. I have our data specialists and Kathy Muser coming to help me on a learning walk. So it's a variety of people going on those walks, as well as teachers will go on the learning walks. We have our professional learning communities. We meet every Monday, except for the GREA union meeting Monday. There's observations and the evaluation process. Classroom visits, that's pretty much when I go into a classroom and just, visit a classroom every day. I try to get into everybody's classroom at least once a day. But usually I'll pick a couple of classrooms and spend a few more minutes, and then I give them some feedback on what I saw, what was maybe some suggestions for improvement, things like that. And then, of course, we have our basic assessments, Dibbles, MAP, Reading Street, and my staff is doing a daily fluency for math this year, and I believe that is different for them as well. We've had already a lot of professional development. I took a group of teachers to Lansing this summer, and we listened to the authors of Turning High Poverty Schools into High Performing Schools. It was an excellent in-service. And then I took a few more when they came in September, and I'm planning on taking a few more in November. And basically, the authors of this book really talk about how climate is so important in reaching students. They spend a whole day on just talking about, how to improve the climate in your school. So it's very good, because we know that our teachers, don't live the same world that our students live. It's a different world for them. So it really tries to help us connect. And that's where the whole idea of, let's get a profile on every student. I want to know, what do they have in their bedroom? Do they have a computer or a TV or games? How many siblings do they have? Just things that we can get to know them. We had Ben Borkel from KISD come and do gradual release model training with us. And then my reading coach has done quality questioning. We're doing a lot more on that. We've talked a lot about poverty, climate, and culture. When I was a reading first coach, I was introduced to the spelling inventory, which I think is a great little assessment that will easily tell teachers exactly what phonetic skills their students are missing. And so we've given that to all of our students, and our small group instruction begins there. If I know that you don't have your long vowels, that's where I'm starting with you. So that's been a really good addition to what we're doing in the school. We've asked our teachers to actually take specific steps toward improving the classroom discussion. So they've had to bring to our PLCs their posters they made with students about how do you ask for clarification from another classmate? Or how do you disagree acceptably? And so we're trying to really help them build the capacity to have discussion in the classroom. We've talked about data. We've had Becky McReynolds come and talk to us about understanding data and making it understandable to students. So every Monday we meet together and we have a little bit of professional development, and then we work on, what are we doing in the classroom for that next week. So we've already done quite a bit, but of course, coaching is really, I think, going to help my teachers, especially with math. It's really easy to do, rote memorization, but it's that algebraic thinking that we're really hoping to target. Our current map data shows that algebraic thinking is one of our lowest strands, pretty much across the entire board for math, and then foundational skills in reading and vocabulary for ELA. So those are the things that we are targeting in our PLC work. So that's pretty much what I just said. Our next steps is to really focus in on our intervention groups. We have Michigan Reading Corps, Schools of Hope, Kids Hope. We have math and ELA groups in the classroom. I mentioned our Superintendent's Dropout Challenge. Coordination with Loop. We know that our Loop staff is doing things that go with our learning targets. They're working on math fluency just like we are in the classroom. I bought some multiplication wrap to play on the bus because I have over 200 students who ride the bus every day to and from. So I thought, why not? We couldn't extend the day, but we're trying to extend our learning.
Yeah.
So the drivers are using that multiplication wrap on the bus. We have some math competitions that we're setting up so that we can encourage some classroom-to-classroom competition to get that fluency in there. And then, of course, the coaching around math reasoning, ELA, quality questioning, and gradual release. I think that's the end. Any questions?
You actually get into every classroom every day?
I do. I walk through, my building is really, really long, so I'm getting lots of exercise.
Yes, it
I get
is.
in, not always for a long time,
Sure,
but I
but
try to see how things are going. And then, I'll sit down with my iPad and, watch what's happening and just shoot an email to the teacher right away.
Wonderful. Well, I'm glad then that superintendent and staff have pursued the not pulling these principals out of schools all the time, so that you can do that. That's great.
Lisa's up here.
You're someone I know from a long time ago, when you were a first-year or second-year teacher, weren't you?
Yes,
you?
I was wondering if you were.
I remembered. I was going to come over and talk to you, and I thought, that looks like Elisa.
Yeah, these meetings are usually, this is your life.
Yeah. No, she was just a new teacher.
Yeah.
And then you were at Burton, weren't you, for a while?
Yep, for a
Did
long
a
time.
really great team teaching, a
Yep.
co-teaching experience.
Love that.
I have used that, discussed that through my years. That was the only time I saw it work really well.
Yeah, I was just talking about that today with some people I was in a training with, that was such a great, they were asking
great.
which I liked better, self-contained or doing the resources. Said they both had their advantages, but working with some really great teachers is definitely
It's an excellent,
doing co-teaching.
excellent time.
Yeah. Well, hi, I am Lisa Manella, the principal at Mulek. This is Rochelle Houston, and she is part of our ILT, and she also did priority school planning with us when we initially started last year. And if you can go to the slide, our teaching and learning priorities, we're actually, some of them came from, well, they all came from the data that we used back when we did our planning. But when we were doing our planning, we had Kent ISD there. 3 or 4 of the people came to help us decide which strategies would have the most leverage. And we all, then, each of us decided which would be the highest leverage. I took ours back to the staff and said, here are some choices that you have. And so our high leverage, different strategy that we're using this year is the formative assessments. And we're using them in math. Our math is our lowest scoring on both the MEP and the MAP
data. We will continuing with questioning and discussion techniques, which was elementary initiative last year, so we're going to continue to deepen that. Our math fluency is not very good, so in order for them to build on their operations and algebraic thinking, we need to increase their fluency. So we did training in the Otter Creek Math Mastery Program in both fluency and word problem solving. We have interventions and accelerations in both reading and math. So we have some people who are in our building, 3 people who are doing interventions, and that way teachers can reach the kids who are at core and those kids that need to be challenged to do the accelerations. And also working on our PBIS. Last year when we did budgets, I opted to, with some Title I money, buy more of a social worker so we could get some of those kids who are needing services more consistently. So she is there, part of our PBIS team. We've really strengthened that, changed things a little bit this year. Instead of having one monthly celebration, which we do as a school, we do classroom celebrations on the other 2 weeks, so kids don't have to wait a whole month to have a celebration. And we also have star tickets and kind of not quite Chicago Bear tickets, but we have star tickets, so. Here's our data, which shows, for the map, our foundational skills are our lowest, and of course the number fluency, algebraic thinking. And something that I wanted to add here was that our teachers, when they wrote their goals for their evaluations, used a lot of this information. So a lot of them have foundational skills, trying to increase those skills within their classroom. So the kids are testing and being college and career ready. So they both have a lot of the goals that were written were on foundational skills, language usage, and then the math fluency. So their goals are coordinating with what we want to see improve as well. And our MEEP, we actually want to see a lot more yellow, which starts in some of the reading. Our math is definitely lower than our reading. We only had one subgroup this year. Well, we had 2. We don't have any of the ELL students anymore, but our one subgroup that we are especially concentrating on is our students with disabilities, which was a subgroup that we needed to focus on. So year to year, we have some improvements, but we still need to make more. We did go to 9% in the overall, so we're above that 5%. We were 2% the year before, so now we're up to 9% on the top-down listing, so that was a good jump for us. Professional learning, we had Otter Creek at the beginning of the year with both fluency and problem solving. Formative assessments with Laura Otten at the beginning of the year, and she will be coming once a month to do one of our PLCs to continue that process. And we have a process that 1 week the teachers will be looking at their formative assessments, they're logging them, seeing which one are successful, what they could work on. And then Laura will come in and work with the teachers to add new formative assessments to their list of skills that they already have or assessments that they can do. And then look at the data that we're collecting. Questioning and discussion. Last year we did thinking through quality questioning, book study, so we're continuing with that this year with some of the new teachers and just using some of those strategies. Using those highly effective videos in the Danielson rubric for teachers, so they know what highly effective lessons look like. Differentiated instruction and flexible grouping. Laura Otten with the formative assessments, the whole point of doing formative assessments, you can see what kids have it, what kids don't, where kids are struggling, so then you can create those differentiated groups. PLCs are focusing on the things up above. And then we started this year using our school-wide clip charts. And then I talked about some of the additional structures being that we've changed some of our star parties and all that, so that we're continuing to build on what is already working to add another layer so that kids can be successful. And our next steps, which is not on there, sorry. To conduct meaningful data dialogues to analyze our data and our learning walks. And I like to have learning walks with different teachers on them so that they are being able to see what our focus is. And this year, it's changed a little bit with our data dialogue. What we're focusing on will then be translated into what our learning walks will focus on, which is kind of come through the whole school improvement state. And then monitoring, being in classrooms. Teachers have binders in their classroom that they're monitoring their quality questions and formative assessments, and doing those classroom visits. A lot of the same things that have been already generated through the other slides. Any questions? That's good. No questions? All right, and I wanted to say Becky McAdams, who is our data specialist, has created binders for us. So we have what we need and what information we need to put in here, so when the state comes in, then we will have everything ready for them to look at, and, you know, that keeps us on track to monitor what we need to monitor, and the state will have all the information, so. Great.
Do you all have any questions for Carolyn or the staff as a whole about the whole process? And
I don't necessarily have a question about the process, but one thing that seems to be a theme is the numbers in operation and algebraic thinking. And I'm just wondering, curriculum design-wise across the district, you know, maybe materials or whatever the case may be, but what are we thinking to obviously address what's a common theme?
For one thing, I think there is a new emphasis on the importance of that. I think for far too long, we thought that kids would sort of pick up those skills through osmosis. What we are finding out is that we have to build the conceptual framework around the fluency, mathematical fluency. We have to be intentional about ensuring that kids are retaining those facts and those kinds of things. There is procedural fluency, and then there's just the factual fluency, those kinds of things that probably we have not given enough attention to. So we've rewritten all of our curricula so that those foundational skills have risen to a level of importance. And a lot of that was pointed out through Common Core as well. Common Core is very exact in terms of stating which grade levels certain skills must, in which grade levels certain skills must be mastered. So that a lot of that work has taken place over the past 2 years in terms of in terms of putting those things in place. But as Lisa mentioned, there are also programs like there is a district benchmark test on mathematical fluency that's in place now. There are also programs that the schools are using. Otter Creek, she mentioned. Some schools are using Otter Creek, but there are like 3 different programs that are actually out there. The other piece, and I think it is probably the most important piece, and that is, and I think you probably heard that from several of the administrators. Part of the design of the curriculum was taken into, also took into account the instructional model. So with both reading and math, you know, we had to ask ourselves, if it's the child in the back of the room that has his head down and not engaged on and on, what would that child need to learn? And out of those conversations came this whole notion about the importance of small, flexible, skills-based groups. That is consistent in research. It's not rocket science-y, but it is consistent that the smaller your groups, the more impactful they are, because it allows us to provide the kind of immediate and specific feedback that kids need right there on the spot. So one of the things that we think as a district is our high leverage strategy is in both reading. We have extended the amount of time. And as Mel said, it's through the bell-to-bell teaching, but also there's a 90-minute literacy block and a skills-based instructional block where the skills are specific to that child's proximal zone. And the same is true in the area of math, where those small groups are specific to filling the gap in that child's specific needs on those foundational skills. That's the long way of saying it.
Well,
But the
it's-
small group instruction is what we are hanging our hats on.
Well, it sounds like there are similarities across all the schools, but it sounds like there's also, I was impressed with the distinctiveness of the different schools and also the strength of the building leadership. So it seemed like that was something that,
I was very impressed with the building leadership, and one of the things that I did as the principals presented was I looked for close alignment between the deficit area and the strategies that the principals and teams have put in place. So there was comprehension, there was specifically a strategy addressing comprehension around close and critical, that repeated reading that we know is good for comprehension. There was a mention of differentiation, and we know that that is a broad strategy, but when we connect differentiation to comprehension or to close and critical or to leveled reading, there's so many ways to be very exact with even differentiation. So if a deficit, for example, is numbers in operations, certainly there are differentiation strategies, many of them. And it's some as simple as just changing the target depending upon the child, that would make that strategy applicable. So I listen very closely. They probably know me by now, that to just how closely, if there is a deficit, did they address the deficit? As simple as that. And I saw lots of consistencies. I was very impressed.
so, any other comments or questions?
Thank you.
So I'd like to thank the schools and the principals
Yes, thank you very much.
for your leadership. We're looking forward to your meet.
Thank you all.
Decided that we are going to move the attendance
Yes.
presentation to the superintendent's retreat.
Yes, to the retreat next week, the board retreat, yeah.
All right. Well,
Okay, so that would be all on behalf of the schools.
all right. Thank you, guys.
Okay, thanks a lot. Take care. We'll see, and we'll do more schools next week. Or next month?
Yes, and I do need to talk to you about that. We do have the 12-13, all of the evaluation reports, and I think we have 4 additional schools. So would you like for me to put together a draft on how we could spread?
Yeah, we should meet and kind of also keep in mind that we only have 2 months left. So, anyway, so. and then
So
we'll-
would you like for me to set up a meeting then?
Yeah, sure,
Okay.
let's do that. All right,
Thank you so much.
adjourned. Thanks. Very nice.